What is going on? It is Alex coming back at you with another video. And today I have a special guest for a back and forth collaboration mock draft. Garrett, say hello to the people. Let them know where they can find you.
Yeah, what's up? Appreciate you having me on, Alex. And you can find me Football Analysis, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. And yeah, I appreciate you having me on.
The whole shebang. We're going to be going back and forth. Garrett would like the odds. Oh, just kidding. You want the evens. You're afraid of the Giants.
I am.
I am no man who's afraid of the Giants.
You never. I mean, it could be Shedeur. It could. We'll get it. We'll just see how it plays out.
Let's see how this plays out. I'm gonna be honest. I'm gonna piss off some Giants fans. So you know what? You're not gonna be the one who has to do it. Let's get into this. Let's have a great time. I'm gonna start out with that number 1 overall pick. Garrett, we actually got to meet for the first time in Mobile. That was super awesome. You recruited me to the Cookout fandom. So it's like now I'm just searching for it. Like I'm waiting for it to come to Dallas, Texas. And my wallet thanks me, but then it just forces me to go and just buy other stuff, longing for some good Cookout. So shout out to that. But I'm going to go Cam Ward with the number 1 pick. Money talks, not mouths. And based especially on the Zeitler 1-year contract, I felt very confident in the fact that they've solidified their offensive line solely for the fact that, well, based on the term of it, they want to bring a quarterback in. I don't think it's going to be a veteran. Yeah,
I like it, and that's where I think it's going to be at this point. I would be shocked if it's not Cam Ward. And by the way, Cookout, just quickly, dude, just what a place. What a place. It's cheap. It's great food. I could go for a burger right now if I'm being honest. But anyway, here we are, number 2 with the Browns. We're recording Sunday night, the 16th. I still think they're going to. I don't think Kenny Pickett's going to be the guy. I think they're going to bring in somebody. I think there's a realistic option or realistic chance that they somehow acquire Kirk Cousins. And I'm not going to really focus on the details with all of that. But I don't think Kenny Pickett's going to be the guy. I don't think they're going to force Shedeur Sanders at number 2 overall. And with that being said, I absolutely love the idea of an edge rushing duo of Myles Garrett and Abdul Carter. And if the Super Bowl reemphasized anything, it's just how much winning up front matters. And the idea of having Myles Garrett at 29 going on 30 for the next 3-4 years, and then Abdul Carter for the first 3-4 years of his career with those guys together, why not pair them? So I like Abdul Carter a lot.
Okay. See, something that I want to hear your thoughts on is whenever I see a team make a 1-year deal, it doesn't tell me what they're not drafting. It tells me exactly what they are wanting to draft. And they're taking those 1-year players as placeholders in case they don't get the player that they want. So seeing Joe Tryon Shoyinka made me think, okay, you're looking at an athletic edge rusher to add to your arsenal. So to me, it made a lot of sense. I'm curious if you think the same way.
Yeah, I'm not really. I mean, I agree with the general sense of what you're saying, but I'm not moved by Tryon Shoyinka at all. Yeah, exactly. Bucs fans especially know his signature was, let's not just get to the quarterback, but get past the quarterback, fly up the field, and not get the sack. And it's incredibly frustrating. And he was in a good situation from day one. I don't think it's a matter of, oh man, now we have Myles Garrett on the opposite side. He's going to feast now. There's an art to, or there's you have to have the ability to sack the quarterback. And I just don't think Tryon Shoyinka does that at a high level. Yeah. And if Abdul Carter falls into your lap, I think he's the best pass rushing prospect since Will Anderson. And I like Abdul Carter quite a bit. And I think his comparison is Micah Parsons. And I think he's a really, really good football player. I'm not overthinking this selection.
Yeah. Go best player available at the position of most value. I get it. At number 3, I told you I'm going to tick off some Giants fans. And you look at the way Joe Schoen drafts, and yeah, they missed out on quarterback, but they didn't end up taking one at 5 because they didn't think it was the best player on their board. And I think that Joe Schoen, even with his seat literally lit on fire, it is red, not because of the color, but because it is so damn hot. He is going to be inclined to go after a quarterback at this spot. But with the amount of people who are saying Shedeur Sanders is not a first-round pick on my board, he's not a first-round pick, I don't know how he would sit there and believe that Shedeur is going to be higher on his board than Travis Hunter. And I do think, based on how aggressively he has tried to approach these veteran quarterbacks, that they are trying to be able to potentially use, hey, we're going to get Travis Hunter at 3 as legitimate bait. And on top of that, if Deonte Banks doesn't work for 1 more year, you have your contingency plan on your team already for whoever the coach is going to be. So I do think that they're going to try to acquire a quarterback, whether that be a veteran or whether that could be a trade even for Joe Milton, who is pretty close nearby. But I don't know if Joe Schoen is the type of guy to reach on a position if he is not comfortable with them being worth the pick that he's done. So I'm going to go Travis Hunter here.
I don't think that should make Giants fans upset at all. And to be completely honest, that would have been the selection that I would have chose if the board played out like this. I mean, what can I possibly say about Travis Hunter that hasn't been said? I mean, you guys know he's a good corner prospect. I think he will be a good corner with receiver packages. As you know, I think he could be a 25, 30 reception guy. But he's also an upgrade to the position. And when you bring in, who did they? It was Javon Holland, and help me out with the corner. Who did they just bring in?
The Paulson Debo.
Yes, Yes, I knew it was somebody. Anyway, Paulson Adebo, Travis Hunter. I'm going to be honest. I'm out on Deonte Banks based on what we saw in 2024. I hope I'm proved wrong. But he was benched for a lack of effort at times. That's not good. You don't want to get in that precedent. You know, if you get benched because you're not a good football player, that's one thing. But I mean, you could at least try and sell yourself that, hey, this guy's given 120%. That was not the case last year with Deonte Banks. He also wasn't the best on top of it. So I love the selection here of Travis Hunter. That is who I would have went with. And with the Patriots here on the clock at number 4, they've tried everything over the past couple of years to bring in a receiver. I'm not going to overthink this one. Teterow and McMillan. I have seen a lot of, not necessarily intentional Teterow and McMillan disrespect, but more so other players getting hype. And I'm good for that. You know, I don't want players to not receive warranted hype for the 20 years that they've put in for their entire lives. But I think we're at a point where it's kind of prospect fatigue with T-Mac. He's a good football player. And him and Drake May for the next 4 or 5, hopefully longer years together. Why not pair together when you've tried everything to bring in a receiver and you simply can't? Just draft one that falls in your lap.
That's a good move. All right. So you don't think that the stigma of him not testing because he's not going to test out very well won't actually drop him the way that some rumors are saying? Do you think it might be some smoke from potentially like the Jaguars if they don't want the Patriots to potentially select him?
There's a lot of teams that it could be from, whether it's the Jags. I mean, even the Panthers down at 8, even the Cowboys at 12, even the Cowboys. But no, I think I'd imagine that we're going to select another player in this class that I'll kind of go back to this, where I look at the tape and it's just like, I don't care if he runs. I mean, I'd care if he ran like a 4.8, but there's thresholds on tape where it's like, you can see that he's not a slow player. He's not, you know what I mean? Or just whatever you're concerned with, you can alleviate that concern by watching the tape. So T-Mac, good football player. Don't overthink it. And I think he's wide receiver 1.
Okay. Nice. I mean, out of the top wide receivers, he's my wide receiver 1, so I respect it as well. I think he's developed so much as a route runner over the past year, and people just like to talk about the statistical decline that he had. There's a lot more context than just the stats, and I thought he did even better this year than he did in a great year before. And number 5 for Jacksonville, there's a couple of picks that would end up making sense here. I would say that the Braden Fisk of it all would make me think that Gladstone, also the lack of addressing the defensive interior, would make me think Gladstone's going to be focused on Mason Graham. I think if Teteroa falls, that's their number 1 option, but they have a really solid fallback option that they might think is potentially more plausible. What do you think about the Jaguars situation at 5 and maybe a name or two that is not Mason Graham?
Well, to be honest, I wasn't the most prepared for that because I was just thinking Mason Graham, boom, don't overthink it. He's such a good football player. Right. However, I like Luther Burden. I wouldn't want to take him at 5. But I would not want to take him at 5, to be clear. I don't know if that was clear. But I like they just brought in Hainsley over from the Bucs like that to help out the offensive line. Ooh. They lost Evan Ingram.
They did.
Where he went to the Broncos.
Yeah.
We saw the impact that Brock Bowers had last year. I like Tyler Warren a lot. I wouldn't hate Tyler Warren at 5. I mean, to me, he's a top 7 player in this class, really at worst. So Mason Graham, Tyler Warren, you get another weapon for Trevor Lawrence on a team where I'm not really inspired by the weapons outside of Brian Thomas Jr., of course. I wouldn't hate Tyler Warren. You can sell me on either Mason Graham or Tyler Warren.
All right. I was going to go Mason Graham anyway. I was curious because that was the name that I was also thinking about as the dark horse here. And I think I'm going to tie that into a conversation that we'll have a little bit later. But You're on the board at 6.
All right. I'm on the board. You're actually on the board at 7. This pick has been sprinted in. I love what the Raiders have done. They brought in Geno Smith. They raised the floor. And, you can't really head into another season with the quarterback play they had last year. Gardner, Aiden O'Connell. I thought at maximum they were going to be a 7-win team last year. Maybe they pull out a couple. Maybe somehow they win 8 games.
Right.
No, I was, like everyone, uninspired. But now they brought in Geno. And now that you have a respectable quarterback, they have a good offensive line. Let's just draft Ashton Jeanty. He's a really good football player. I like Ashton Jeanty a lot. Obviously, everyone likes Ashton Jeanty. He's the best running back prospect in the class. He's an elite prospect. There's not many blue chip talents in this class. I think he is the 3rd best prospect at the position in the past 7 years, behind Saquon and Bijan Robinson. Not a lot to say. Should be 1,100 rushing yard from day one.
There you go. Especially with Pete Carroll. You talk about the lineage of running backs and how he uses them. It makes sense. Number 7 for New York. A couple interesting options here, but one that stands out to me the most. I don't know if you're tracking, but Shedeur Sanders is still on the board.
I was going to ask. I'm glad you brought that up. I was going to ask if you were thinking about him.
I would think about it, but there's a person that I'd sprint the card in for based on the composition of this team, as well as what Aaron Glenn just came from, and showing how much the tackle spot matters. And I think Armand Membou perfectly mirrors the ability of what you have in Olu Fashanu. And you're developing an athletic, young, high floor, high ceiling duo for the future. I'm curious what you would do in this situation between Membou and Sanders, but is there another name as well that you'd like to toss in?
No, I'm a huge Armand Membou guy. Not that I was the first to discover him, but I saw he was like mid 3rd round hype in just November, December. So I watched him, and I watched probably 10 pass blocking snaps, and just the way that he mirrors his athleticism, his anchor, I immediately thought, okay, why? What am I missing here? And he's a phenomenal prospect. I love Armand Membou. He is, draft a good football player. Don't overthink it. Everybody collapse in the war room. Let's move on to day 2, or let's at least wait till pick 24, 25 to really get back into things. See if there's a guy we'd want to trade up for. That's how I think this conversation would go. I love Armand Membou, but with the Panthers up, the Panthers just spent a lot on defense in free agency, and I'm happy for them, by the way, because that defense last year was atrocious. But they brought in Patrick Jones in free agency. They nearly brought in Milton Williams.
It's true.
I still like the idea of, I know they still have Jadeveon Clowney, but Clowney's old. He's a double-digit year veteran. Patrick Jones is not, I watched him for 4 years as a Vikings fan. He's good. I don't want to dog Patrick Jones, say he's a bad player. He's not a bad player, but when you have a talent like Mike Green right there at number 8 overall, I'm going Mike Green. I like Mike Green. He'd be another good option to get after the quarterback. And I think he would be, based on their needs, I think he'd be the BPA at this situation.
Okay. You and Broshmo ended up going with Mike Green in our battle mocks. For me, I ended up going after Jalen Walker personally to replace Shaq Thompson and have that edge rushing ability. But I'm curious I know that you might be a little lower on Jalen Walker if I remember some of your tweets about him. So I'm curious, do you just think he might be overrated as an edge prospect, which then I would completely agree, or are you fully out on him as a linebacker as well?
No, I like Jalen Walker as a linebacker. Just as an edge, I am not the biggest fan. I don't think the pass rushing profile was there. I don't think the pass rushing plan was there. And he finished his last year. Obviously, a lot of people love to point to Shamar Stewart's 1.5 sacks. And obviously that's not good, but Shamar Stewart fits the part. He looks like a legit pass rusher whenever he's getting after the quarterback. The sack production just wasn't there, but you see him routinely get after the quarterback. You see the pass rushing moves. There was a sack this past year Jalen Walker had against Texas where Quinn Ewers dropped back not 6 yards, not 7 yards, but every bit of 11 or 12 yards. Kelvin Banks does everything he can to throw him out of the club. He trips up Quinn Ewers as he's 12.5 yards behind the line of scrimmage. Yeah. And there was another sack he had in that game. I know he finished the Texas game with 6 pressures and 2 sacks, maybe 2.5 sacks. I don't remember off the top of my head. But the point is one of his other sacks, he was literally playing a spy role on Quinn Ewers. Ewers rolls out, and the time to the snap to the sack was like 5.9 seconds.
Right.
That's not. I mean, there's quite literally a third of your production is based on Quinn Ewers not making good decisions that NFL quarterbacks are not going to make.
Right.
I'm not a Jalen Walker edge rusher fan. I agree. I think he's a good linebacker. I think he's a good pursue linebacker, but edge rusher, I'm out on. Yeah. At least right now. Now he's a young player, so he can definitely develop. You know, he's only 20 going in 21. So 3 years from now, he's 23, going on 24, he starts to work his way in third down situations. That's a different conversation. But right now, specifically, not over Mike Green as a pass rusher.
Okay. At number 9 for New Orleans, the thing is, you can talk about the Juwan Johnson contract. I'm a big guy. Kellen Moore loves his tight ends. I'm looking at Tyler Warren here. That's like where I'm getting to. And this is the conversation I was saying I was going to pull our previous conversation into. I think a lot of these free agent moves are risk mitigation moves. And you see Juwan Johnson get like a 330, right? About $10 million a year. I think that is basically hedging his bets, thinking that Tyler Warren might go at 5. That he might go at 7. I mean, you talk about Aaron Glenn. He was on a team where they drafted Sam Laporta very high, and there is that potential to be able to get that legitimate, consistent option there for Justin Fields, Tyrod Taylor, whoever the hell the quarterback's going to be. And then at pick 8, you could also talk about that, right? I mean, Tommy Tremble, $8 million a year. We already know it's an overpay. Is there the option for a reliable pass catcher there? So I do think that it's possible that they're going with that signing to say we want to focus elsewhere. They have other issues to focus on. But I think when it comes down to it, they really need a tight end part of a Kellen Moore offense because I think that's super duper key. And they don't trust Tyler Warren to get there because, like you said, you have Tyler Warren as a top 7 player on your board. And I think a lot of other people do as well. And I think they're going to accept the fact that they're going to pay $10 million a year to have 2 damn good tight ends. And I think they're willing to say that cost was worth the potential benefit.
I'd love it. It's a great football player. The Saints need great football players. There's not a lot to say other than that. The Saints are not in a good situation. They frustrate me a lot just with the way that they go about maneuvering the cap around. And I'll just leave it at that. I've went on the Saints. I'll just leave it at that.
We can make a whole episode based on the frustrations with the Saints. Yeah.
Right. So with the Bears up here, this is a tough situation here. I'm going to be honest. I don't like how the board broke for Chicago. I really don't like how the board broke for Chicago. I would love to have drafted Will Campbell, but they just addressed the interior offensive line in a big way.
Right.
I think I'm going to go James Pierce Jr. just to bolster the pass rush even more. I mean, you're in a division where you have to get after the quarterback. I mean, you're in a division where you can never have enough corner help, although I think their corner situation is better than their edge rusher situation at the moment specifically. Yeah. So James Pierce Jr. is going to be the pick. I mean, you have JJ McCarthy. Sorry, let me back up. You have Jordan Love, Jared Goff, and JJ hasn't played a snap yet. So I'll at least, I'll mention the other guys first. But with everything the Vikings have done this offseason, and then, of course, the Lions, 15 wins last year. The Packers are no slouch. Why not go edge rusher, get after the quarterback?
Yeah. Do you think that James Pierce's coaching concerns are an issue? Because that was also a conversation you were talking about earlier where with Deonte Banks, you didn't like it because he was pulled off the field because of his personality or his lack of effort. With James Pierce versus the Florida game, I think he actually ended up being benched because he was having a lot of antics off the field. Would that change your opinion on how on this pick? Or do you think the talent, because I have him as the number 2 talent in the class. Like, I love his game is just insane. Like, would that change your mind if you're sitting there into your Dennis Allen and saying, I have all these other players. Do I take the talent and the coaching issues, or would you try to focus on somebody else?
I think the talent for the position you need is worth the risk here with James Pierce. And a lot of the time it's a culture standpoint. I think Ben Johnson is going to do a phenomenal job of building the culture. I think he's already shown that he is, he's all about just winning. He's all about building the team the right way. And I like James Pierce, the football player. And I think if he's going to a situation like that, I wouldn't worry too much about it in that situation.
All right. I mean, I love James Pierce. I do have my concerns with his off the field red flags, but I mean, even with that factored in, he is still a top 15 player for me. So well worth the risk there at 10. At number 11, this is going to be a curveball. I mean, maybe it might not be. Maybe you see this the same way I do. But Dre Greenlaw ended up saying, hey, after I agreed to terms with the Broncos, I ended up getting a call by the 49ers trying to get me back. They extremely highly value that second linebacker position. They also need pass rush. I do think that in the second round, they've been extremely tied to Femi Oladejo, so I don't think edge is their round one issue. But I know that they love mobility at linebacker, and they honestly might be able to use Jihad Campbell as that version of Will McDonald at that same frame, and maybe not the same arm length, but athleticism, bend, it's all there. I think Jihad Campbell is kind of like their dream child, so to speak. And I think he's going to be insane for him. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I like it. I like Jihad Campbell. He is, if there's a player that I think a linebacker that has pass rushing traits, the way people want to talk about with Jalen Walker, I think Jihad Campbell does. He has the size, he has the athleticism, the explosion. I would prefer Jihad Campbell in a pass rushing type role in year one, based on where he is now, to Jalen Walker. That might be a hot take, but no, I love the pick there.
It is not. That is exactly what I feel as well. I'm going to go Jihad Campbell there.
All right. Dallas is up. I would love T-Mac to fall. Unfortunately, he did not. But you know what? I don't know. I mean, look, the board played out really well. Zach Martin retires. Just give me Will Campbell. I feel like that's an easy fall into the lap. Let me just take Will Campbell. Let me just take a really good talent, not overthink it, and just move on. I know people love clowning the Cowboys, and I mean, I get it. Jerry does it to himself a lot of the times, but they have more often than not recently done a good job just drafting good football players, whether it was CD 5 years ago, Micah 4 years ago, Tyler Smith 3 years ago. Now Mozzie was that's a couple minute conversation, but they're not. I mean, they don't do a bad job in terms of bringing in talent. So give me Will Campbell.
All right. Also, I mean, if he doesn't work out at guard, you still could put Tyler Guyton to right tackle, and Will Campbell could have his shot at left. I mean, there's still that role available. So I like that. So at number 13 for the Dolphins, a couple routes I'd go here. The one that's speaking the most to me is the one with the most hype. And I don't know if I think you're questionable on Nick Emmanwori as well. But I think both of the safeties are really solid fits in this defense. I mean, regardless, you're going to have them for different roles. But the defensive back group is depleted. And I think they didn't address it in free agency very aggressively because they knew at the minimum one of the two is going to be here. And I think that Nick Emmanwori is worth the risk because of the potential. And I don't think the Dolphins, the Dolphins value speed. I mean, they got speed everywhere.
They do.
But, I mean, you're also drafting another South Carolina defensive back because you already have one, Cam Smith, on the team. So you have that lineage right there. So I'm going to go after it. Nick Emmanwori, I'm a lot higher on him than most. I think that you and Marcus are a bit lower, correct?
No, I like Emmanwori a lot. I like Emmanwori. Marcus does not. I do. I like him.
Yeah, Marcus detests Emmanwori at this point. I'm like, damn. But yeah, no. Where do you have Emmanwori overall, like range, so that we can keep
20 to 25. 20 to 25.
So that's a good range to have him. That's the standard consensus range. What about Starks? Similar range?
I'd say similar. I'm not. I know PFF has him at 9. I like Starks. I'm not top 10 on him.
I have him at
20 to 25.
So it's like I have Starks at 22, but I have Emmanwori at 9. So I'm very high on. Yeah. I'm a sucker for Emmanwori.
Okay. I like that. I like Nick Emmanwori though. I do like him a lot. But I mean, if he was not a safety, I'd probably have him like 14, 15. We still have 6 weeks. We still have 6 weeks to the draft. So there could be some maneuvering around. But anyway, with Indy up, Tyler Warren not available. The problem here with Indy is they just lost Will Fries and they lost Ryan Kelly along the offensive line. They brought in a couple of players in the secondary. So I'm not going to go secondary here. I'm not too high on Tyler Booker. I don't think he's a bad player. I'm not. Well, I don't think he's. I don't think he's the 14th best player in the class. But man, would love to. You know what? Colts fans might not like this one because I'm going to go with kind of. I want to go. I'll tell you where I want to go.
Okay.
Just I'm going to bounce this off here. I want to go Will Johnson. Boom or bust. I want to go Will Johnson. That's
Full
where
rehaul.
I want to go.
Full rehaul, the corner core.
That's where I want to go because he's healthy, top 5 talent in this class. Healthy.
Oh yeah. Okay. You rolling it?
But
there's but.
I'm sitting here thinking they just took Laiatu Latu last year. Kwity Paye the Colts fans are frustrated with Kwity Paye, and I understand.
Indeed.
Believe me, I understand.
I like Kwity too, man.
The choices here to me are Will Johnson, Donovan as a Raku.
As a Raku could. But let me pitch something to you. If the Niners are not that into Femi Oladejo in round 2, you can pair him back up with a former teammate.
From Latu.
Latu and Femi. And they kind of complement each other because Latu's more pass rush oriented. Femi's more run defense. But
they need pass rush. That's the thing. Yeah. They need pass rush.
Right.
You know what? I'm gonna go Will Johnson. I'm gonna go BPA when healthy. I'm gonna go Will Johnson. I know I might take a lot of slack for that, but Will Johnson, one of the best corners over the past 5 years when healthy.
Yeah.
Medicals are gonna be, we'll see.
Big. Yeah.
However, if Colts fans do not like that pick, and if medicals would not clear out, my backup selection would have been Donovan as Raku. I'm just gonna provide that little.
Yeah. Well, honestly, how many people are going to be mad that their corner core has more than 2 corners in it?
Yeah, exactly. You need it. If you're ever going to seriously compete,
yeah,
you need corners in this conference. So yeah, I like it.
Can you imagine that corner core though? You got Travarius Ward, Will Johnson, and Will Johnson is kind of the epitome of the ceiling of Jalen Jones,
right?
And then also Juju Brents. So
Juju Brents, yes,
yeah. Like I do still love that fit right there. And then I feel so good for Lou because he just hasn't had a corner in like 8 years at this point. So he's finally going to actually have a corner core for once. We'll see what damage he can do with that. But 15 for Atlanta, honestly, would have been one of my dream picks there with Will Johnson. After hearing that quote that Ulbrich ended up saying, where he's like, oh man, Malachi Starks is the safest player in this entire class. Heard from Joe Marino. I think his name's Joe. Man,
Joe hosts Joe Marino is a podcast hoster for Locked On NFL Scouting.
Yeah, he used to be with TDN. It wasn't Joe. It was my buddy Cam Marino, who's an insider for the Falcons. He ended up standing next to Ulbrich and ended up overhearing a quote saying, man, Malachi is the safest prospect that I have ever seen in this class. And apparently the Falcons had the largest contingent they've ever had at the Georgia Pro Day. I think they're going to be potentially looking in at this. They do have a defensive back role very wide open, and Jesse Bates, Malachi Starks. Let's call it as it is. It's a good.
Not so fast. Lee Corso, you ready?
Oh, let's go.
Smoke screen. Georgia. They need pass rush. Micah Williams. Hypothetically, I'm just saying. I just want to point it out there.
I agree with you that they need some pass rush
for a team that could not identify an edge rusher if they looked at a football field.
You know what? Hey, I agree with you. My second pick wouldn't even be a pass rusher at this point because Jeff Ulbrich likes stand-up rushers. I would end up saying Kenneth Grant would be my second because they really lack a legitimate nose.
Especially with Grady.
They're talking about trying to gain some size. It could be smokescreen season.
Oh, it does. It's not could be. It is.
It is smokescreen season. Does he see my boy Cam lurking and is like, let's spread some bullshit to the press. This could be the way. You know what? I like that idea. Jeff Ulbrich is a master deception artist. And
he loves his D-line. He loves his D-line.
I'm going to go KG. They literally were talking about wanting to gain size.
Okay.
And so you don't have a nose. You don't even have the ghost of Grady Jarrett anymore. We're going to go KG.
Okay. But that actually kind of hurts me because I was probably going to take him for the Cardinals then I could pair him with Darius Robinson along and then Josh Sweat. You'd have a hell of a defensive line in Arizona. But the Cardinals are in a weird situation. And by the way, I like what the Cardinals are doing long term. I love the idea of having, BJ Ojulari and Josh Sweat and Darius Robinson. I would love, I actually just talked myself into this one. Let's just get our version because what they have been doing over the past couple of years, and I want the Cardinals to start like winning consistently. I know there was a point last year where they were like 6-4 and they were technically like atop of the NFC West, and then they kind of, crumbled. But anyway, I'm going to get because Jonathan Gannon, of course, came from Philly. Obviously, that 2022 Eagles team was really good pass rushing wise. They were one of 3 teams that year to have like 3 guys with 50 plus pressures in. It was Hassan Reddick. It was Javon Hargrave and somebody else.
Was it Fletch?
It was. I think they had 4. I think it was Fletch, and then I think it was also Josh Sweat.
Yeah.
So we're going to acquire our version in 2025 of Jalen Carter. Obviously, he's not as good, but we're just going to draft simple. We're going to pair him up with. Darius Robinson, and our front 4 will be Darius Robinson. Hopefully, it's a better 2025. I know we went through a personal tragedy last year and was also he didn't play the first several weeks of the year and then had the personal incident on top of that. BJ Ojulari coming off a torn ACL. Josh Sweat, big free agent deal. Love it for the Cardinals. And Walter Nolen. So there we go.
They tried to make an offer for Milton Williams as well.
There we go. We have Walter Nolen. I actually like that process there. So I'm ready. I like it. Cardinals, I'm rooting for you. I like it. JG, Jonathan Gannon, let's make it happen, buddy. I like it.
All right. Yeah, I mean, I personally love the fit because of the fact they literally just telegraphed that they wanted it. And we're willing to spend probably up to $19 to $20 million in order to fill it. That's definitely a prototype and a build and a position that they are looking for. At 17 for Cincinnati, Malachi Starks is speaking to me. That second, like especially the safety core, I personally do not have a ton of faith. I don't think anybody's going to be taking the offer for Trey Hendrickson. I think that they've already reacquired a ton of capital in terms of players for the defensive interior. That's not a move, in my opinion. When you look at the guards, you could look at Kelvin Banks as an opportunity to potentially have a short-term guard, a long-term tackle. I don't think that's a bad idea. But I'm curious what you would do here, but I'm looking heavily into Malachi Starks going just best player available. I know how valuable safety is to Al Golden. And just your thought process on that.
Oh, it would be Starks. Like it wouldn't even be a thought.
Yeah.
Maybe you could. No, I mean it would be Starks, but like if I'm in the war room, okay, hypothetically, let's just weigh this out. I would toss out Jahdae Barron just to have the versatility, but it would be Starks.
Yeah, I just think that the odds in the second round are that Ben Morrison will be there far more likely than Xavier Watts.
Sure. So, and you also let Jesse Bates walk. Not that Malachi's comparison is Jesse Bates, but let's just draft a good safety. Let's actually pay our players and let's, move on. So Starks would be the selection. All right. I'm on the clock with Seattle, and I'm not going to lie. I thought about this idea when I was back on the clock with Indy. I'm glad you brought it up. Look, Seattle needs a lot of help. This is a player that I actually am really high on. Kelvin Banks. Kelvin Banks to me is I love him, man. And that is a guy that I would go to bat for. Seattle needs a lot of help along the interior offensive line. Sam Darnold cannot have pressure in his face all game. Kelvin Banks, really good anchor, really athletic. There's questions at right tackle with Seattle right now with Abraham Lucas long-term. 2025 guard, maybe 2026 tackle. Good football player, Mike McDonald guy. You're not going to overthink this. Let's just draft Kelvin Banks and be happy. I mean, that's to me as simple as the thought process is. I'm a huge Kelvin Banks guy, and I think him being a guard for Seattle, him being a guard for Minnesota at 24, Houston, of course, any of those teams to me make a lot of sense.
Oh yeah, 100%. Like, I'm curious if you saw this as well, because I'm a little bit more on the Kelvin Banks pessimism side. And so obviously I like to hear your thought process on this being on the opposite side of the spectrum. I'm worried about his foot speed. Like in open space, I almost felt he was a little Tyler Bookery from time to time, not to that degree, but just the athleticism did bother me a little bit. So I'm curious what you did see, because maybe I'm going to go back and because I respect your opinion. So I want to be able to review and understand, like, see it through your eyes. So what parts of his game and athletically did you find like more so inspiring? And like, because for me, I just did start saying like, I do have a little bit of concern with his mobility.
So with Kelvin, to me, it was the fact that you really didn't see him get beat a lot outside. At least it wasn't a concern. And I know I'm not going to actually say this intentionally, although I know you're high on him and I'm not saying this as shade. I just want to kind of have a player reference here.
Your shit.
But no, I'm not intentionally, I promise. But Anthony Belton is a player I like a lot, but I think obviously there's a lot of tackles to guard talk in this class. I think Anthony Belton is the epitome of a guy that should move inside. But
100%. I agree with you 100% on that, by the way.
Anthony Belton, to me, just there's no chance he can survive on an island in an NFL game at left tackle. I don't really care which side. So I'm just using that as a point of reference, where with Kelvin Banks, the difference in foot speed is night and day between him and Anthony Belton, right? And technically, the one time he did get beat, quote unquote, outside by Jalen Walker was when Quinn
too deep of a drop.
12 yards back, right? I think that was the only sack he was credited with all year, off the top of my head. He, to me, is a good mover. He's athletic. You can see it on tape. And I'm more so looking at the pass protecting game, where you see him get out in the jump sets quick. You see him get his hands up quick. You see everything in sync with him at such a young age, because Kelvin Banks will play the 2025 season at just 21 years old. I love him as a prospect, man. I think he is not epitome, but I think he's at a floor level. I think he's a good or an average tackle. I think the ceiling is a Pro Bowl tackle that can bookend your offensive line for the next 6 or 7 years. And even if you want to kick him inside, I like the power, because there weren't many times where he was like getting, speed to power just right in the chest. And I'm just going to push him right back into Quinn Ewers' lap. So I like Kelvin Banks' game a lot. And I don't think he gets beat outside. And I think he is a really sturdy anchor, which obviously is necessary to be able to play at the NFL level. I think he uses his hands well. I'm a big Kelvin Banks guy.
Okay. I will keep note of that. And I'm re-reviewing guys that I feel like I need to give second, third, fourth chances. I'm like, I need to. I owe it to him. And so he's on that list along with DJ Giddens. I ended up putting my dream fit for him at McDonald's. So I feel like...
Dang. I like DJ Giddens for what he is.
I know everyone likes him. I'm like, fuck. I think
he glides well. I mean that in a good way.
Yeah, for me, I'm trying to see how comfortable I am with the translation of the glide movement. But here at number 19, I think this is one of my favorite / easiest picks here. You look at Michael, you look at Shamar. I think they're really solid players. But money talks far louder than mouths do, and even systems for that matter. And it's pretty obvious. The first player, if I'm not mistaken, that was signed in free agency this year was Hassan Reddick. And it shows that is not the prototypical build of Michael, nor the prototypical build of Shamar. And it's the exact build of Joe Tryon Shoyinka. So there's a player who I would say models a little bit similarly, and that's Donovan Ezeraku. A little bit on the smaller side, that's sub 250, more focused on being able to get around the edge, being able to have 34-inch arms as well is very nice. So I think this is just the perfect B+ player. You're not going to hit a home run, but sometimes, especially when your seat's on fire, you kind of just like to hit a nice double, get a nice little B+. So I'm going to go Donnie Ezeraku.
I like the selection. Like it. I'm a big Donovan Ezeraku guy. Now, with Denver on the clock here, I don't think Evan Ingram is like the long-term solution, although I'm glad that they brought him in. I really am. Now, with the idea, or not with the idea, but with Luther Burden, Emeka Egbuka, Matthew Golden, I think there's a tier separation between Golden and Ayu Manor, between wide receiver 4 and 5, personally. And I'm not going to go into further conversations just because I don't think anybody else has the chance of going in the first round. But when you look at the connection of Sean Payton and former Ohio State receivers, whether it was with Michael Thomas and look, I know you can say scout the player or scout the helmet rather, or scout the player, not the helmet.
Not the helmet, yeah.
But I think you can go with either Emeka Egbuka or Luther Burden. I think you'd be good either way. Ultimately, though, I'm going to change it up. I'm going to go Emeka Egbuka. I like him. I think he is a smooth route runner, just a really solid football player. If you want to go for the home run and go for Luther Burden, I wouldn't be opposed. But Emeka Egbuka, to me, should be a guy, assuming he has the targets, a floor of an 800-yard player with a potential anywhere from 1,000 to 1,200 every year, as long as he's an NFL player. He is just a player. You turn on the highlights. Yep, you know what you're going to get. And you're not going to get a Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, but that's fine. He's
not going to get that 20 player either. Well, I guess you got Justin Jefferson at 20, in the 22.
22,
yeah.
But
I'm like,
that was because he was a slot merchant. But anyway.
This is true. All right, so Emeka, it is Egbuka off the board. Do you notice somebody who was slipping?
I do. I was going to ask. I'm glad you brought him up. So let's go ahead and bring Shedeur Sanders and have Dion and Mike Tomlin talk regularly.
Yeah, so the question is, would Shedeur help out the team as much as Amari and Hampton? Based on the QBs available, because I genuinely am now getting extremely pessimistic about the idea that Aaron Rodgers is going to come to the Steelers.
I hope he does. I hope he does.
I hope he
Enjoy him.
does.
Enjoy him. Enjoy him.
I mean, the thing is, like, people are talking about him to the Vikings. I'm sure that you've had plenty to say about that. Your face says it all. It's literally like Jim Halpert in The Office when you just gave that look. So it's like I see the vibe, but it's like with Aaron, I could never see him to Minnesota because of the fact that he's just so opinionated on his person, like on his offense. Like, I don't see the minds meshing. For the Steelers, I could see it happening. That's why I think it could be a success, because Aaron, I think, has enough say at this point on the offense. But I'm just starting to get pessimistic on the opportunity. And if enough people are saying Shedeur is not going to be a first-round pick, I mean, or he's not a first-round grade, that's usually a quarterback. If they're going to say, like, oh, I have an early second on him, late first is where they usually go. And there's the chance of him starting. And on the Steelers, you don't need, again, to have an A-plus hit. We have the defense, and we have now firepower and a good offensive line to make a B to B-plus quarterback make it work. So I'll go Shedeur, and we just have some type of magnet for attitudes. And if you want to say Shedeur has it or not, that's up to you. But if you do, we don't care. If he doesn't, awesome. So it just seems like that would be the fit. And then if Mike Tomlin is potentially going on, it drive me nuts, but I guess we have our head coach in mind.
Well, that would be Mike Tomlin's Dion would be wild. But anyway, with the Chargers on the clock, they brought in Mike Williams and Najee Harris in free agency. To me, there's two players that are Charger-esque or that are on the Chargers board in this situation. Right now, I think it would be Luther Burden, and I think the other would be Colston Loveland. I mean, they need a tight end really bad. He's a really good player. And there's also the Michigan connection with Jim Harbaugh. Colston Loveland did not have a good 2024 season, not due to his own nature, due in large part to how bad the quarterback play is. And I recommend going to turn the tape on to see for yourself just how many overthrows there were for Loveland, how many bad ball placements there were. The more that I talk this out loud, just give me Colston Loveland. He's a good football player. And yeah, I mean, you're filling a position of need. I wouldn't be opposed to either Colston Loveland or Luther Burden. But I think with them seeing how much Brock Bowers impacted the offense last year firsthand up front, and of course Travis Kelce in their division for the past decade, get your tight end of the future and don't overthink the player.
Can I spin an idea I've been kind of spewing off for a hot minute?
Let's hear it.
So I know that Sean Payton is a master of deception at this point, to the point where he's willing to go insane distances of just talking about fake trades and all that stuff to force people to, take players that he doesn't want. Right. I have a weird feeling that he signed Evan Ingram as a smokescreen for Colston Loveland. I think that Evan Ingram was his $23 million guaranteed version of a bluff, to where worst case scenario, you have two really good tight ends, but best case scenario, worst case scenario, you end up with one tight end if Colston goes earlier, but best case scenario, you're robbing your own in-division rival of a tight end in the future. So that was just my thought process there. Do you think it's reasonable?
With Sean Payton, anything's on the table. So yes, no, I could see it 100%.
I guess that's a good quote. I like that. 23 for the Packers. The defensive line is very intriguing at this point. You look at Michael, you look at Shamar, and you're like, damn, these guys have to go sometime. But they fired their D-line coach, which means they're unhappy with the production that they have, not solely because of their D-line, but primarily because they don't think they're being utilized or coached correctly. I don't think that ends up leading them down the path where they'd go edge unless something was egregious, which some people might say this is egregious. Like a Michael Williams is a potential number one overall pick if he stays healthy and performs the way that we think he should. Pretty good value at 23. But I'm looking at the receivers here as well, because I also think with Christian Watson's injury, with the inordinate amount of receivers that are going to be due money that have been kind of lurking on those day 3 and day 2 contracts, might be time to shift some things up as well. So I'm curious what you think about this situation, because personally I'm leaning Matt Golden here to add pretty much another deep threat on top, but also someone who could end up being a true potential wide receiver one.
I would rather go Luther Burden for the Packers. I
Okay.
think I'm personally a lot higher in Luther Burden than I am Matthew Golden.
Gotcha.
I think Luther Burden is just all around a better football player. I think there's better explosion, and I know Golden ran the 4.29. This was actually the player earlier I mentioned that talk about tape where I don't have concerns with Tet McMillan on tape. I don't really care what he runs. None of that bothers me. You've seen him dominate on tape. I'm a little lower on Matthew Golden than the consensus, I would say.
Okay.
I think he's a solid football player, but when I watch Matthew Golden at Texas, I don't see a guy that ran 4.29. I don't. That's
fair.
There's a difference between 4.29 track speed and 4.29 game speed. I don't think he has 4.29 game speed. Luther Burden, I like Luther Burden. He's explosive. He had a down year in 2024 relative to where he was in 2023. He had over 1,200 yards in 2023. But I think Luther Burden is a really, really good football player, and I don't think there's any weaknesses in his game. You pair him with Jordan Love to give him what I would believe a number one receiver instead of like the 4 number 2 receivers they have. Go for the home run swing. Go for the home run swing is what I would say.
See, you and I see a little bit differently on the wide receivers. So what's interesting is like I haven't updated my wide receiver grades to reflect like my algorithm to reflect the actual 40 times just yet. Like I've adjusted it like in my head on my board. And it's also, I feel like I'm still happy with what my grades are. But Matt Golden, I did give like the tied highest speed in the class. Like, I don't know why. I guess I did see it, but maybe it wasn't consistently on tape as much as I was hoping for. And I think that's kind of like where like you see it. You're like, why aren't you running at this speed? And I saw a lot of those half speed reps, but I will also say, I'm curious if you saw this because you're a big Luther Burden guy and I'm more so we flipped roles. To be fair, not really. I'm still not over the moon about Matt Golden in the same way some people are. Right. But for Luther Burden, I saw a lot of reps where I felt he was kind of half-assing it. Did you ever see some reps where you're like, I want to see some more intensity? Or was that something that maybe I'm just seeing something that might not be there?
I mean, I'm going to be honest. Like that's strong wording just because of like, that, yeah. But the
lack of effort.
No, well, that, but the idea around that, although I don't disagree with what you're saying, but I think there's a part of Luther Burden that's kind of like, hey, like, look, I'm out of here this year. I'm a very good football player. Mm-hmm. I showed what I could show on tape in 2023. There's part of me that wonders if Luther Burden could go back, if he would play in 2024, just because of everything that transpired and the player that he was in 2023. Right. Because I really think that his draft stock, based on where it would have been 8 months ago, fell. Probably close to half a round, maybe not half a round, but probably 8-10 spots. And that's a lot of money. That is a lot of money. But Luther Burden, to me, I just think he's a good player. He is a good route runner. The explosion is there. And I just, when it comes to apples, Luther Burden to Matthew Golden for the next 4 years, I would rather have Luther Burden.
Okay. Well, I didn't even realize Jalen Walker was falling, by the way. But you know what? I'm going to go back to my original point where I think teams I think Halfley's going to think it's egregious that Michael is slipping here. And to be fair, they haven't actually had a legit edge too. They have a lot of projects going on. Why not add one more?
Oh, what
the hell? Why
That's
not?
A Packer selection. That's a Packer selection.
Yeah, it's also a Georgia defender, so it all works out.
You need a receiver. Let's take an edge. You need a receiver. Let's take a lineman. That's. Yeah,
they love those day 2 contracts, my guy.
They do. They do. Now with the Vikings on the clock, they need a left guard. I'm gonna keep the short and sweet. Go Gray Zabel. I love Gray Zabel. I think he's high floor player. I don't like necessarily using the word bust proof, but I feel that he is close to that, if you will. I just think he has such a high floor as a football player. Now my wild pick that I would love to use, although I'm not, would be to go with Luther Burden and then have just the ultimate offense. Yeah, that would be the ultimate. But to have Jettas, Jordan Addison, Luther, TJ Hawkinson, Aaron Jones, Jordan Mason, and then the offensive line that they just upgraded would be fun. But with
Aaron Rodgers.
Anyway, with Jordan James McCarthy and just keep moving on with Gray Zabel. Let me actually confirm that. I'm pretty sure that's his name. But JJ's my guy. My biggest thing with Aaron Rodgers is with being a Viking is like I would talk myself into it, but there would be just a lot of it's Jonathan James McCarthy. That's on me, by the way. There's just a lot that I would have to like 14 years of my life that I just have to like wipe away and then just talk myself. If he won a Super Bowl, it would be all worth it. So.
Yep. Yeah. All right. I was just getting on your case. All right. For the Texans here at 25, I think it's pretty obvious. I mean, it's not a bad
No, I know. But there's
like, I mean, the question is, are they that confident in what their tackle situation is? Like, I don't think they should. But
no, I don't either. Gray Zabel should be a Texan, by the way. Like that would if I was in the Texans war room, that would irritate me.
Oh yeah. What do you have Zabel range wise? Again, I'm not going to tell you to tell me your board rank because I'm sure there's like some premium aspect that you end up monetizing for it. But
no, it's able to me right now. Although I think it's going to go up. I haven't tinkered with it much in the past. I'd say like free agency took over a lot this week, so I wasn't like, oh, let me flip this guy. You know what I mean? Right. So it's probably about the same as it was 10 days ago. But I would say, I mean, I had him at like 25 to 30. But I went back and watched Zabel briefly during a down point of the free agency this week, and I was like, he's going up. So I'd probably say 23 to 26 right now if I had to give a definitive right now. But there's still 6 weeks before the draft, and I love the trenches, man. I love trench play. So I like Gray Zabel, and he's a good football player.
I declined to comment. At number 25.
Why is that? Come on. Why is that? You don't like him?
I think he's a bust.
What?
And I have it number 8 overall. No, I'm just kidding. I love Gray Zabel.
Okay, I was like, wait.
I'm a super fan of Gray Zabel.
Okay. I was like, I thought you were going to say like 45. No, I was like 45. I was like, whoa.
Yeah, and I'm like, I should have said like 62 or some shit just to like really catch you off guard. No, I have him at number 8. His game week 1 versus Colorado said everything to me. Yeah. It's just like, this is your best competition. You're performing your best versus it. And then seeing him in Mobile do it I was like, oh my God. So again, knock on wood, bust proof. So there you go. All right. Well, I'm enough of being a dick right now. Let's help out the Texans. I'm going to go Josh Simmons here. I want to go for somebody that I believe could be a true left tackle. I could go Donovan Jackson for the lack of health concerns, but when healthy, I thought Josh Simmons was the 4th best player in the class. Yeah. So I
agree. Yeah. I love, well, not necessarily the 4th best, but not just an elite talent. I'll just say that. Yeah. Love him. Yeah. There's just, again, watch the tape. Just watch any Quinshon Judkins run, watch anything. Just look at 71 out of left tackle. Yeah. And you're going to see a smooth mover. You're going to see a good football player and a guy that you don't have to overthink as a prospect. All right. With the Rams on the clock, both tight ends are gone. They just brought in Devontae Adams.
Yep.
I'm really at the point where with the Rams, I think you have to see. The thing is I could be talking to a couple of players. You know what though? I'm going to the KISS method. Keep it simple, stupid. If you've heard of that, I'm just going to go with Jeanty Barron. You can never have enough corner help. They're doing a really good job along the trenches. And I think Jeanty Barron is more important to the Rams right now than I think somebody like Josh Connerly would be for the Rams. So I'm going to go with Jeanty Barron.
Can I ask you one question? What do you think of Amos in comparison?
Amos that's another, like we just used the bust proof term. I think Trevor Sikkema has said, find me what he does wrong.
Right.
That's the best way to describe Trey Amos. Now the thing is Trey Amos's ceiling is probably going to be limited. But in terms of doing everything that you would like a corner to do, whether it's be sticky, whether it's click and close, whether it's tackle, he's a really good football player. So I prefer Jeanty Barron to Trey Amos. But I would go Jeanty Barron. I wouldn't be opposed if you wanted to go Trey Amos, but both are good players. Trey Amos would be a Raven pick, by the way. Just, hey, let's just have a good football player drop. Let's just take him. Okay, cool.
You know what's interesting?
That would be. Sorry.
No, you're good. Finish what you're saying.
The Ravens and the Eagles just every year. Oh, hey, how'd this guy fall? Oh, how'd Nolan Smith fall to 30? He was only 240 and ran a 4.39. Yeah, let's just take him. Let's just take him at 30 overall. And then he has like 24 pressures in 4 games in the postseason on the way to a Super Bowl. Oh, gee, how'd the NFL let that happen? That's what I mean. The Ravens and Eagles do it. Oh, Kyle Hamilton falls to number 14 overall. Oh my gosh. multiple-time All-Pro. It's
dude, they every single year, man. Shout out to Eric DaCosta, by the way. Like, what a beast.
Oh yeah,
like
he's
great
a beast.
GM.
He's great. Love him.
I'm checking right now because I wanted to just do this quickly before I was about to rush up a card. By the way, do you hear that?
Yes.
That fucking fan. Oh man, that's gonna send my OG fans back if they can actually hear that. But like my OG fans used to hear a computer fan every single video, which is, I mean, just shout out to those people who were able to endure that. I was looking at the linebacker room, and the question is, how confident am I in Trenton Simpson? And they need a pass rusher. Jalen Walker, I hear, is on some people's top 10s. But what you said with Trey Amos struck a chord in my heart because they drafted Brandon Stevens. Brandon Stevens was also extremely physical and very good at the catch point when he was coming out of SMU. Big asterisk there. Could be someone where they're like, well, we missed on him, but this still fits the prototype of what we were actually looking for. I've never taken Amos to the Ravens, so I'm very inclined to do it. But I am curious what you think about Walker here because, I mean, do you trust Trenton Simpson?
I mean, I like Trenton Simpson a lot as a prospect 2 years ago. I don't think they would spend a first-round pick on a second linebacker behind Roquan, personally. Where I think the Ravens would where I think they would go is, this might surprise you, to be honest. Odafe Oweh is entering his final year. I think a player that would make a lot of sense. You could talk me into Princely McMillan. You could talk me into Nick Scourton. You could talk me into Shedeur Stewart. That would be a little just because of the weight with Shedeur Stewart. Right. But Braden Swinson and McMillan. I know Nick Scourton's heavier as well, not to discard that part. And when I said it about Shedeur Stewart,
he's 260 now. He dropped to 257.
Okay. So yeah. Nick Scourton, McMillan, Swinson. Yep. I think they would go edge. Or even Trey Amos. I think Trey Amos would be their type of player. So that is where I would go. Any of those couple of guys.
You know what? I think that there's going to be enough edge talent in this class to where they can roll the dice on them falling to the second round. I don't see another Trey Amos remotely being there. Okay. So I like that. I haven't taken it before, but I really think so. My comp for Trey Amos is going to be a bit faster, but Tyson Campbell. Because both were always at the catch point and both always were very physical. So I personally like both of them. And so I think it's a good range. It's a good range for them to go.
All right. The Lions are up. It says their needs are wide receiver. I am not going to take a wide receiver personally. I'm going to give Aiden Hutchinson some help. Now, the only question is do we give him, there's a lot of shapes and sizes in this class. Do we give him Scourton? Do we give him Shedeur Stewart? Do we give him Landon? Who do we go with here? The thing is, Dan Campbell likes, his tough, hard-nosed football players. And not that there's anything wrong with like a finesse rusher, a guy that he wins with, with his hand usage out on the outside, and then he kind of works his way in rather than a guy that just kind of tries to blow up the line of scrimmage, speed to power. There's not. Players can win either way. But a guy that I think does a good job of both. He can win with a spin move, and he's had a bit of a down year this year. I was shocked, or not shocked, but I was really high on him entering 2024 is Nick Scourton. I actually was watching some Nick Scourton tape earlier tonight. I think his game is really good, and I think he's a high floor guy. And if you put him in Detroit, put him in a good place where he can go to work, have a clear Batman in front of him where he's not going to have to be the guy from day one. It's a really good situation for not just Nick Scourton, but for any pass rusher that would go into this situation. Unfortunately, they took Josh Pascal a couple of years ago. He didn't exactly work out to the level they wanted. I know everybody talks about, and rightfully so, by the way, about all of the selections Brad Holmes has made over the past couple of years. That was one of the rare ones that didn't to the level of the others. So you get another pass rusher, Nick Scourton, Aiden Hutchinson, Aleem McNeil coming back off the ACL. You're sitting pretty.
All right. Dude, once you said the spin move, I knew you were talking about Nick Scourton. It's so beautiful. It's a thing of art, man. I'm like, holy Toledo. And the thing was, he was doing it at 285.
Hutch could also help with that, by the way.
This is true. But at number 29 for the Commanders, a ton of great options here. I mean, you can go Jalen Walker and have your long-term guy, but Frankie Louvu is his comp. So it's like, all right, that's not really going to be like, you don't need to have too much of a good thing when you end up having some other areas of growth. I think that Shedeur Stewart could be like, these DCs get really flexy with their ability to maximize talent. And to be fair, DQ has done a good job at being able to maximize edge talent. Shamar Stewart might be a perfect guy, but they're also really heavily investing in the offense. And I do think Matt Golden with the perimeter speed, because I think Luther Burden's after the catch ability is still like perfectly acceptable at this point, and he's a really good player. But I think Matt Golden's perimeter ability allows Debo to be primary in the slot, and then you have Terry McLaurin as well. I think that might be arguably as valuable, if not more valuable, than anybody else on the board. But I do want to throw one more guy in here, and I want to hear your thoughts on this. This team lacks a true RB1, and Amari and Hampton.
That's who I'd go. That is who I would go. I wouldn't even think about it. He's an underrated player. His weakness is that he's in the same class as Ashton Jeanty. I think Omarion's a top 20 player in this class. I like him a lot better at the running back position than I do Matthew Golden at the receiver position. They just brought in Debo for a year. I know this is a deep running back class, and you can definitely get production on day 2, even day 3 for that matter. But I'm a big Omarion guy. Love Omarion.
This is something that I want to hear your thoughts on as well. Like production, like people I think are overrating the class to a slight degree because they're conflating production as in like, oh, these guys can get touches with actual impact. And I think what people are failing to see is there's only a couple impact backs, and we're focusing a lot more on the production backs. And it's like with Amarion, Jeanty, I think Quinshawn could be in that mix. Some people like to say Trey Henderson, but I do think that Trey Henderson's a little bit more on the contributory side, the production side, rather than the actual bell cow side. I think we do see a really good top of the class, and I think that people like to say, oh, well, you can get that later. I don't think you can. I think there's only a couple backs in this class that provide that production.
And I'll go even further here just in terms of like the production versus contribution. Yeah. Production, and I'm working on a draft grade video right now that'll be out later this week, so this is a perfect example. Do you think as a Steelers fan that has watched him for the past 4 years, do you think Najee Harris is a top 5 or 7 running back in the NFL? Obviously you don't, right?
Yeah.
But you may not be surprised to know, but somebody watching this may be surprised to know he has 4 straight 1,000-yard rushing seasons. Despite being productive, are you heading into the game? Man, I'm getting the sweats. I'm getting cold sweats thinking about Najee Harris. No. So yeah, I love Omarion. That's all that to say. I love Omarion. But anyway, look, I'm on the clock here with Buffalo. I just want a big fella along the interior. I want to be able to, have Creed Humphrey try his best. I want Tyler Linderbaum to try his best because look, let's just call it what it is. The Bills are, barring major injuries, they're probably going to win the AFC East next year. They're probably going to be sitting there. They're probably going to be 1, 2, 3 seed along with Baltimore and Kansas City. Flip a coin as to how it's going to play out. They're going to play Lamar in the division. They're going to play Patrick in the divisional. They're going to get to the conference championship. Which one are they going to play? Mm-hmm. I want to be able to have a guy that I can place in the middle of my defense and basically say, I'm taking up a body and a half. You are going to have to run the football elsewhere. I can have Matt Milano run behind him. I can run in between gaps. I can have Terrell Bernard play elsewhere. I can have Greg Rousseau set the edge. He does a good job of that, by the way. He's a pretty underrated player. The player that I'm going with here is Tyleik Williams from Ohio State.
Yeah, good man.
Tyleik Williams against Tyler Linderbaum, against Creed Humphrey. I want that in January, divisional round. Patrick, you got to run out of the pocket. Lamar, you're pretty athletic, so that's not really a problem. But I just don't want you running the ball directly up the middle. Tyleik Williams is a fire hydrant, and I mean that in the most complimentary way I can. So Tyleik Williams. I
love Tyleik, man. That's a good pick. All right,
how he's about to do it again. By the way,
he is. I already see what's happening.
unless Veach does it before he can. I'll just say that.
Veach is going to have his own win here. Do you think Jalen Moore is actually going to be their starting left tackle, or is that just a risk mitigation move?
Mitigation. I'd be surprised.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I saw that. I think they should go after Tyron Smith. I don't know what's up with that, but get Tyron Smith on like a 1 year, 10 or $8 mil deal and just kind of make it work. But out of the left tackles, I'm curious what you think. Like Ursary, I don't trust the Chiefs to develop him. They're striking out in terms of developing guys who need legit tweaking. Josh Connerly has initial anchor issues, but he also has some of the better polished reps. Donovan Jackson did really well for how limited his experience was. So you don't need to necessarily tweak it. It's more so an experience issue. But among the 3 left tackles, or maybe somebody else that you want to mention, what are you thinking of here for KC? Or Luther Burden? I mean,
that was the other one. That was the other one where it'd be like, okay, like let's actually give Patrick some receiving help, if you will. I know Rashee Rice he tore his ACL last year. That was unfortunate. Plus, there's a looming suspension with Rashee Rice. And then they brought back Marquise Brown. Luther Burden would be a player that, for the first time in the Mahomes era, where I'm actually backing up, making sure I'm not forgetting anybody, where they actually Xavier Worthy. Sorry, I don't know why I said that. I had a mind fart. Right.
Yeah, like it's always the most recent.
Disregard what I was about to say. But Luther Burden and Xavier Worthy and Rashee Rice would be a good 3 receiver set.
Right.
And then you even have Hollywood Brown for a year. And then you could basically say, Hollywood, thank you. And then wish him well, because you have all of those players that are 25, 26 or younger.
Right.
But you also need offensive line help. The thing is the Chiefs have picks 63 and 66. They can trade back up. Obviously, that doesn't apply for our mock specifically, just thinking out loud. I'm going to be honest. I think I would go Luther Burden here and just take the good football player. Or, Luther Burden would probably be my pick, knowing I can trade back up for any of the guys that you mentioned. And I would be, I would like Donovan Jackson for the Chiefs. Especially because they traded Joe Thuney, but you could also talk me into Josh Connerly. I actually like Josh Connerly a lot, by the way. But look, Luther Burden, and then trade back up for Josh Connerly. Presumably, I'll just be honest, I'm not going to take Josh Connerly for the Eagles. The Chiefs would not know that, but you could at least have a day to start making some moves, between Thursday and Friday, and try and trade up to get Josh Connerly. They have the capital. They have 3 other top 100 picks. I'd go Luther Burden and try and come back up for Connerly, but that's just me.
It'd be crazy. So I was hearing what you were saying, and honestly, kind of digging the idea of trading 66 and 63 to Tennessee's 35, because it's almost equal in trade value, and Tennessee gets a second and a third and like their third back. That'd be intriguing, because then you could end up moving up and just selecting basically 2 of the top weapons. And if a tackle goes, it makes your decision easier. You know what? This is time for fun more than anything. Like, I think they will be weaponizing those picks. So I like that idea. And honestly, they've shown the desire to weaponize around Patrick Mahomes far more than protect him. So I'm going to go and I'm going to select Luther Burden there.
Okay. I like it.
With the vision that we talked about.
Yeah. So with the Eagles on the clock here, there's a lot of, Darius is a good player. But there's a lot of directions I could go. Their needs are wide receiver. I'm not going to draft a receiver. I'm not. Now that Luther's gone, I'm not.
Just because wide receiver is that big of a need. I think that Jahan Dotson's so underrated at this point, just because people think he's a nothing.
Right. The perception as to who he is probably a little off. But I think I would, with Darius Slay leaving, with Isaiah Rodgers leaving, I think I'd have to go corner. And the thing is you could talk me into several corners that are on the board. I'm gonna be honest. I'm a big Azareye'h Thomas guy, really big Azareye'h Thomas guy. And you know what? It's the final pick of the mock. I'm also a big Savone Ravel guy. You know what? I'm gonna go
it perfectly.
I'm gonna go. I know ball, bro. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Don't big bro me like that.
I'm kidding. You know what? We're an hour into the mock. It's time for a little fun. I'm going to go Savone Ravel. Although I'll give a backup selection in case Eagles fans are annoyed by a corner that tore his ACL, and that they would not want a project player. The backup selection that I would go would probably be, it'd be an edge player. I still have the board up. I haven't closed my. I'd probably go Braden Swinson. That'd be a good Eagles pass rusher. Just a guy that. Just how they could even draft him in the second round, but maybe not the second round, but a guy that they could trade up for. But the point is, look, Savone Ravel, good Eagles corner.
I will just say this on top of that. If you trust the Giants board from the HBO Hard Knock show and trust their color coding system, the Eagles did draft multiple players with the red indication, which means they're fine taking injury-prone players.
Yeah.
And Cooper DeJean broke his leg before they drafted him. So
I like Coop, and you could have Coop, Quignon, and Ravel.
Well, I was saying like the injury,
Right.
the season-ending injury, like they aren't afraid of it if the value is right. I was curious to see if you're going to mention Jalen Walker there to play that linebacker spot because
N'Kobe, right?
Dean, yeah, like just replace it. But
I had it in my head, but I don't. I mean, you may not believe it, but I did have it in my head. I was thinking it, but I was like, I'd rather go Savone than I would Jalen Walker.
I was just worried that you're going to go after Max Hairston, and I was like,
No, I'd rather go. I'd rather swing. Howie just won a Super Bowl. Swing for the upside. You're in a chance where you're in an opportunity where you can swing for the upside. So that's where I'd go.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming on. This was a great mock draft. We took a lot of curveballs because that's what you do when you have time to actually be a little bit crazy. But the NFL draft's crazy. And I think we're all a little bit crazy. So thank you guys for watching us. Garrett, feel free to give out a little bit of an outro.
Yeah. Make sure if you're watching an hour and 10 minutes, 11 minutes into the mock, subscribe, help Alex out. Closing in on 20K subs, get them up there. And that'll wrap it up for today's video. So hopefully you guys enjoyed. And until next time, I'm actually just going to take the outro here. Until next time, as always, please be safe and have a great day. Love you guys.
Let's go.